Hey everyone, Tired Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully you guys are having a good weekend. It's supposed to be a pretty quiet one. Unless you're in Maine, it's not really much of anything going on. And even in Maine, mostly just dealing with heavy rain. Flooding is definitely a notable possibility there with post-tropical cyclone Philippe. And then, of course, there's shower and storm activity towards southern Florida, towards the Great Lakes, and then around Arizona, parts of Colorado here. But other than that, it's been a pretty nice weekend. The fire threat's slightly elevated over here towards the southeast. So we've been pretty dry here, but even then it's not crazy. But as long as we're doing what we're supposed to do, not doing anything too haphazardous, we should be all right here. Beyond that point, the fire threat isn't even critical. There's no area to be concerned with. Same thing with severe weather for right now. There are some days ahead, though, that do have my attention, even though there currently isn't an area for them. So we already spoke about this weekend. Nothing to really be concerned with at all. There's some thunderstorms possible, but that's about it. Day 4, which would be Tuesday, looks pretty similar. Potential's very low. It's when we get to Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Those are the days I'm kind of watching. I'm particularly interested in Thursday, but Wednesday and Friday from recent runs kind of look like some sleepers. As we look through today's models, I'm kind of not as certain about that still, but predictability too low does mean it's worth keeping an eye on. It's worth warranting some level of attention. So basically we're going to go ahead and start out by taking a look at that through our models here. Starting out with the GFS here, and from what we can see here, here's our current trough, and this is what's going to keep the temperatures down through a large part of the eastern half of the country. But as time goes on here we go into Sunday, Monday looking pretty stable here, mostly zonal flow at this point. It's not really until Wednesday where we start to see our next player come into view here, and what we see is this little stout area of low pressure here, and a trough does try to develop with that. It doesn't look as pronounced on Wednesday as I've seen in previous runs, in particular yesterday. This was looking a little bit more intense. Could still see severe weather with this, but it's not. But the amplitude of the trough is definitely going to come into play here and maybe limit that. It's not to say that maybe somewhere like Kansas, the Kansas-Missouri line, anywhere around here could see potential for severe weather. But I'm really not going to read into that too much until we get in range of the convective models here. We'll get a much more detailed breakdown of that. But overall, as we continue to roll forward here, and I'm trying to get it to roll forward, it looks a lot better when we get towards Thursday, especially towards Thursday evening. There are some questions for instability on this, just based off some of the model data that I've seen here. This is a newer run that's come in, so we'll have to see how. I'm going to look into this more even after this video's been put up, so that way we can get a little bit more clarity here. But considering we're still 132 plus hours out, it's going to be a little bit difficult here. Like I said, I'm really just waiting to see what the model data, the convective models have in store for this once we get closer in range. So here's a look at the trough that's coming through on Thursday into Friday morning. I'm also questioning what could happen here on Friday evening. There could be a setup for maybe the Ohio Valley, maybe even towards the Tennessee Valley, maybe even Dixie Valley, northern parts of it at least, where we could see potential for severe weather once more. Again, the same uncertainties that I have with the other 2 days do exist with this as well. So not going to go too heavily into detail right now with that, because we're going to be taking a look quite a ways out. We're going to try to look all the way towards the middle of the month here at this point. We're already starting to race through the month of October here really quickly, and fall is definitely going to be making sure that its presence is felt based off of these storm systems alone here. Pretty deep trough that comes into play here the following weekend, so I would expect some more cooler temps across the eastern half of the country. Definitely solidifying our positive P&A pattern. And then here's the potential tropical system that we need to be keeping an eye on. Questionable still as to where it's going. Really stout trough starts to dig in here as we go towards the 22nd if this holds up. But what will end up happening is this new area of low pressure almost would kind of look like a cutoff low take shape here, and this could be our next player for severe weather down the line, or another player, I should say, of severe weather down the line. We're already towards the end of our model run here, which is 384 hours. Star comparison, while we can't look as far out, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Euro as well. And what we can see here is a pretty similar outcome the first few days. See pretty good agreement between the GFS and the Euro as far as Tuesday setup into Wednesday. Even less certain, or actually I'm a little bit more certain based off of this run for Wednesday here about severe weather. It looks a little bit better, but not by much. Still same issues with the wave amplitude in my honest opinion there, but Thursday does look a little bit more notable now. We'll still have to see how this plays out, but I think timing might be an issue just based off of what I'm seeing with the Euro. The amplitude and the orientation of the trough could come into play as far as Friday. It's also progressing a little bit faster with this too. This is just one of the things that we deal with when it comes to severe weather setups. A lot of the models will sometimes have different interpretations or model discrepancies or disparities between the two. So not really surprising to see that. This definitely happens more during this time of year as well. When we get into the following week, after this next weekend or upcoming weekend, if you will, do see a pretty similar outcome taking shape here. And of course, like I said, this doesn't go out as far as GFS goes, only 10 days out versus 16, but I'm seeing a lot of similarities between the two. Not really picking up any off of any low here off the Baja here, or maybe coming into the Four Corners region here, but nonetheless still need to be on the lookout here for that as well. We did talk about that in yesterday, or last night's video I should say, because we put up two. So now I guess really the biggest thing, more so than anything, while severe weather is highly possible, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the height anomalies and get a look at our air masses here. So here's our air masses here. Here's our current air mass that's causing the big cool down out towards the eastern half of the US, especially towards the Ohio valleys, where we're going to be dealing with some of the coldest temperatures here. Over towards the northwest is where we're having some of the warmest air. It's really more so north of the border where the warmest air exists right now. So as we continue to draw forward here, we have this cold air mass somewhat move out, but it actually starts to deepen a bit more. And then here's that tropical system that we need to be watching. This makes it into the Gulf. As I mentioned in last night's video, we could see another tropical system form on the fringe of what this front will end up becoming, especially as we get later towards the week and into the weekend. Really, wind shear is going to play a factor as to what happens with this. But as we continue onward here, that collision of warm and cold air does exist, even though I have my uncertainties and my reservations about how the setup looks. This little pocket is one potential tell, but other factors of course come into play. Like I said, the real question for me right now is instability. I do think moisture return is very good, and we'll get into that part, but stuff like CAPE and EHI, all that little advanced, all the little bit more advanced stuff, I'm still questioning it at the moment. Lifting index, etc. But anyway, let's go ahead and keep this rolling here. Here's that next air mass starting to come in. That positive PNA only seems to really deepen here, but the warmest air is, oddly enough, it's more so towards the north. It's a little bit more of what you would expect from an El Nino type pattern. Usually see this a little bit more towards the latter half of fall and into winter with El Nino type setups. Here's that little feature that I was talking about, and I don't know if this necessarily is tropical or not, but it definitely seems to be hanging off the Baja here. And as the next little part of this run comes in here, it does eventually make its way towards Arizona here, causing a cool down. This may end up causing an entire pattern shift here. But again, one thing to make note of is that we're 384 hours out at this point. So a lot can't really be put into this. Not much merit to really have at all here. But this could ultimately result in maybe the PNA switching to a negative PNA, where maybe we might see more cold air here. I don't see this being strong enough to really cause that, but it is something to definitely take note of and check and see if this ends up becoming more of a trend as we go into the days ahead. Looking at the euro, it's not really going to be too much of a difference here. Air masses could be a little bit stronger here, and it looks like that is the case on the start of this run. It's a pretty similar deal. Air mass does seem a tiny bit deeper over here as far as where we are on Thursday. So I think, like I said, potential for severe weather Thursday definitely seems to be the most notable out of the 3 days that I've mentioned. And then after that, like, we have a pretty stout air mass, but this gets kicked out by another system and maybe potentially a trough ejection. I wouldn't necessarily call it that in this case, but maybe we need to be on the lookout for another day of severe weather, possibly on the 17th. It's hearsay, and I'm not really a fan of looking at the euro when it comes to severe weather. During the latter half of fall, I've noticed it does a little bit better, but we're a little early here. We'll see if this ends up coming into play, but and this is also the height anomaly map. I'm not really fond of using this to track severe weather. If anything, I use this more for winter storms, and right now I don't really see any of those, so I'm not going to put too much merit for it. And of course, like I said, 240 hours out, pretty long ways to go, so this is bound to change. Now, as far as temperatures are concerned, we're going to get to see a very good indicator of those troughs coming in as time goes on. So we can already tell just from this weekend alone, the trough is prevalent across the eastern half of the country, especially towards the northern parts. Do start to make a little bit of a temperature recovery towards the middle of the week here. We get some 70s and 80s back into play across the heart of the country here, 70s in the southeast, and even some 60s up here towards Tennessee and Kentucky. But as time goes on once more, we continue to see that little warming trend, and this is going to set the stage for our severe weather once more. You get some 90s coming back into play across Texas, Oklahoma, and this is what partially would concern me with that setup. And then here comes the front right here. You can clearly see it in this area right here, the stark contrast. Here's some 80s right here, and then right back here, here's some 50s. So our front is going to be right here. This is going to be our cold front or frontal boundary. So that being said, as we continue to go forward, and you can even start to see it in the mountains, even we're starting to get into those 20s, getting into the 30s. We're starting to see that colder air really start to take over at this point. By the time we get in towards next weekend, we're starting to see 50s across the southeast. We get back into the 60s, but we're barely hanging on in Atlanta here. And the 70s and 80s are even becoming a little less prevalent in Florida now. Not anymore. I'm not seeing any more 90s over there. Barely hanging on to those in South Florida, if anything, right now. By the time we get into the 16th and 17th, we continue to see that cold air start to dominate more. Still see a little bit of a return of some warmer air towards the heart of the country, but this is going to continually set the stage for new potential storms to develop. And then as time goes on, we just see more and more cold air start to pour in at this point. And it's a pretty similar scenario here with the euro. I'm just going to run this into a loop here so you can see it's pretty much the same thing. The same old song and dance, if you will. But like I said, it's probably not going to be too long before we start having to talk about more winter storms here. So like I said, be on the lookout. It's getting closer and closer to this weather season, depending on where you are. If you're towards the eastern half of the U.S., you're definitely already there. So let's go ahead and go a little further with this here. You can actually see the likelihood of below average temperatures over the next 6 to 10 days, and also the activity of the weather pattern itself. Towards Alaska even, we're starting to see that cold air begin to kick in here. Towards the northwest, of course, we're expecting above average temperatures, and even towards Maine above average. But everywhere else from the heart of the country out eastward, definitely looking at below average temperatures. Greatest probability of below average temperatures actually exist across the heart of the country towards Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. You can arguably call this a four corner area as well. Looks not too dissimilar from the four corners over here out west. Just a little fun fact for you. But so we continue to go forward here, starting to see an increasing amount of activity in the week ahead here for this region towards the west. And then towards the eastern half of the U.S., especially towards the southeast and beyondward, anyone in the eastern time zone, we can expect an increase in moisture content here as well. So increase in precipitation seems likely at this point. Towards the heart of the country, could see slightly below average areas of precipitation, and then in particular across, let's say, the Red River line, we could be seeing that. Also, that was a heck of a football game that I just saw earlier with that. And then same can be said over here towards the northern tier of the Rockies here, and right towards the U.S.-Canadian border here. So that's what we're looking at, the 6 to 10 day outlook. On the 8 to 14 day outlook, you start to see the coldest air being concentrated a little bit more towards the southeast, towards the Appalachia and southward now. You're even starting to see those below average temperatures in Florida at this point too. Then over towards Maine, we still are hanging above average, but this is where you really start to see the shape of that positive PNA setup here. Textbook look almost, I would say. But that heat is starting to try and spread its way back to the east here. What tends to happen normally is whatever you see out west eventually will move east almost inevitably. And here's exactly a great example of that, because if you look on the last map here, you saw more cold air dominating. Now we're starting to see a little bit of warm air trying to make a comeback here towards the end of the month. Like I said, there's still a lot of uncertainty with this, so this is bound to change, especially as the days go by. But greatest concentration of above average temperatures, no surprise, northwest in particular. But we're starting to see the Rockies even being quite a bit above average, or having a high probabilities of above average temperatures. Also, we're starting to see a decrease in that below average temperatures over towards Alaska, and an increase in above average temperatures there as well. We even get to see Hawaii on here with above average temperatures. No real surprise there. And then the Aleutian Islands as well, which is interesting. But nonetheless here, east is definitely looking like we're going to be cold a majority of the month here. So just be prepared here. Have those sweaters ready. Maybe even have the coats ready depending on where you are. For a lot of us, I wouldn't expect to see too much in the way of coats. Maybe the mornings might give you a little wake-up call. But fall is definitely here, folks. We look at the temperature anomaly here. Some of the highest values I think we're going to see are going to be within the next 6 days, I think. We're going to see some higher values, especially towards the northeast, where we're getting to about 20 degrees below average, possibly. And as we continue to go forward here, we're going to see the deeper values definitely exist more so towards, I would say, the Ohio-Tennessee Valley. We do get a sneaky little area that pops up over here towards the southeast, where we're seeing about 20, maybe even getting close to 25 degrees below average. And this is within the next week, surprisingly. Next 5 days, actually. So this could happen this week, so let's keep an eye out. But like I said, I'm really thinking the highest values are going to be just ahead here. Here's that front coming in. And after that, this is where that cold air really starts to take over at this point. There are those negative 20 degree areas, or 20 degrees below average. I don't want to scare anyone. But as we continue to go forward here, start to even out just a little, or level off just a little bit, I should say. But still, the majority of the lion's share of the warmest air is going to be mainly north of the border. A few areas over here towards the northwest still could see about 20 degrees above average. So we're at a pretty good point of parallel, I should say, in regards to that. We're seeing plenty of 20 degrees below average towards the east. It's a textbook, like I said, textbook positive PNA setup here, and we're seeing it come into fruition here. I don't know how soon this pattern will go. Sometimes these don't last very long, but it seems like this one is a lot more persistent. But we're still going to see little periods where we're going to see warm air coming into play. That's why when I say always keep an eye on, when we're looking at the outlooks, like, don't always think that every day is going to be 10 degrees below average or 30 degrees below average. It just doesn't work that way. Even now, as we're looking at the Euro here, you can see areas sometimes that are seeing 11 degree below average temperatures here, out west even. So can't read into it too much, but the lion's share of the days ahead are going to be cooler, inevitably. So that being said, taking a look at the Euro, not too dissimilar, slightly warmer than the GFS, which is surprising. In the past, I've seen Euro usually trend colder here. last but not least, we'll go ahead and get into the dew points. This is what I was referring to earlier with the severe weather setup here. And we're having a little trouble here. There we go. We're getting moving now. So for the most part, we start out pretty dry, of course, heading into the weekend. Zonal flow doesn't usually allow for a lot of Gulf moisture to come into play, and this is a great example of that. But as we get into Tuesday here, we start to see that moisture begin to come back, and like I said, this is what's going to set the stage for our severe weather setup from Wednesday onward. See a decent return over here towards the what I would arguably call the second area four corner states. It's not a perfect four corners like this, but I just keep harping on about that. But we see a secondary moisture return on Thursday. Friday, this is more prevalent across the Ozarks and the southeast towards Dixie Alley, if you will. Then as time goes on, here's that front coming through. We lose a lot of that moisture behind that front now, so we begin to see a little bit of a calmer period until the next storm system kicks in. Moisture returns right now are not too impressive at the moment, so I'm not very concerned about a severe setup, but keep in mind the dew points change a lot depending on how far out of range you get, and look where we are. I mean, it doesn't really need much more explanation than that. It's pretty self-explanatory at this point. So as we continue to go forward here, pretty similar deal. Looks like we might have another front that tries to develop around the 23rd. We'll have to see how this one will play out. Pretty similar deal on the Euro here too as well. We'll just set this one into a loop in light of time here. I know you guys don't want to watch a 40-minute video, but here's the moisture return once again. A little bit better moisture return with this in comparison to GFS for the days ahead here, and nothing really returns after that front comes back in. So really it'll be probably towards the latter half of the month where we might see another shot for severe weather based off of what I'm seeing so far. This is likely to change though, so don't sleep on it. We'll of course continue to make videos and keep you updated and keep an eye on everything here. Now let's go ahead and actually verify this, and we'll do this by looking at the lightning flash density from the European model here. It's one of my favorite models to look at because this indicates the probability of thunderstorm potential through lightning flash density. Brighter the colors usually will mean the higher lightning flash density. So here's a look at Tuesday night into Wednesday. This could probably be an MCS that we end up seeing develop here Tuesday night. As we get into Wednesday night, here's a particular area over towards central Kansas that's worth watching, and then over towards northern Missouri, we'll have to watch them as well. Another MCS from the looks of it here, and then as we get towards the day on Thursday, which I'm thinking is going to be the most active day as of right now, we see a decent amount of lightning flash density. Could be a squall line, could be an MCS. And then as we go towards Friday, interestingly enough, even though there's decent indicators for this, we're not picking up on much lightning flash. It seems to be more so towards the Ohio Valley, if anything. Even then, the lightning flash density isn't incredibly high. So like I said, I had my apprehensions about it, or my uncertainties about it. Definitely starting to see that play out here, at least from the perspective of the Euro. And then as time goes on, things start to quiet down. No real surprises there. The rest of the period all the way up to the 12th, nothing to really go off of there. Unfortunately, this is the only model that the Euro model is the only model that has this. I really would love to see something like the GFS have it, but it would be hard to use for 384 hours. But anyway, we'll go ahead and actually take a look at what precip looks like on GFS. And then after that, we'll go forward here. Also, with the increase in troughs here, another thing to look out for will be snow. And this is going to end up staying just north of the border for right now, at least in the short term. But in the longer term, we're going to start to see the increase of mountain snow out west. And then eventually, this will start to work its way into the U.S. here, especially towards the eastern half. And here's some potential lake effect still here. I wouldn't expect a lot out of it, but nonetheless, we're starting to see some of that. We're starting to see some of that blue popping back up on the map, and the return of the 540 line, which is the 32-degree line. So if you're within that 540 line and you have a storm system heading your way, look out, because you might see some frozen precipitation. And lastly, we'll go ahead and look at the same thing on the euro, and we'll wrap this one up. I'm waiting for this one to load. Forget sometimes it takes a minute, because I mean we're looking pretty far out, but pretty much a similar deal. We're starting to see more ice with this one, which is interesting, so look out Canada, but I'm pretty sure you guys should be prepared for it. I don't expect it to be a major ice storm, but here's our next couple of systems. Yeah, a lot of these are starting to trend the storms a little bit more towards the Ohio Valley in comparison to what I was seeing yesterday, where we were looking at more Tennessee Valley, which is fine by me, because I'm not really, well, I am and I am not looking really for severe weather at this point. Definitely need all the work, all the sunny days I can during the work week. During the weekends, I can care less if it storms. But that being said, here it's pretty much a similar deal here. Starting to see some of that mountain snow try to sneak its way back in, especially as this storm system really starts to take shape here towards the 15th. Could see some impressive totals over here towards Colorado, so I'm looking forward to seeing what that brings here. So those of you that are not looking forward to winter or fall, I am sorry. But that being said, this is pretty much all I got for the video here. Hope you guys found it useful, enjoyed it. Timestamps will be in the description, because I know this is going to be a longer one. But even then, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, and also hit the comments. Any questions you have, I'm happy to answer. But anyway, this has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. You guys enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday. Until then, take care and have a good night.